Hello, fellow human light beings. Welcome once again to the Michael Denny YouTube channel, formerly the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel. Today I'm going to do a live stream question and answer, and I'm going to talk in depth, or I'm going to try and talk in depth. Remember the two experiences I had where higher dimensional light beings took me to what we call the 5D. So I've got a whole list of things I'm going to go through here. And my hope is that this will create a larger discussion. As always, my suggestion and invitation to you is to please come to these live guided interdimensional meditations, which we do every Wednesday and Saturday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. This is the fastest way and the strongest method to create the scenario for yourself where you can have these same kinds of experiences that I am having. All right. So let's get into it. Okay, here. We get my lighting situation set up a little better. Okay, so one of the first things that happened when I started doing CE5, which is human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials, one of the first things that started to happen was these beings started to show me in various ways that our Earth is going to go through a transformation, a shifting up, an ascension. We would call it 5D. I use that term simply because it is the best understood term for what we're talking about. I don't think it's accurate. I don't think that we're going to shift up to the fifth dimension. We will certainly shift up to a higher frequency within the third dimension. And that has to do with, and I'm not going to take the time to talk about it in this video, but there's a difference between frequencies and dimensions. Dimensions are spatial. So anybody who talks about, they've already achieved the fifth dimension, they are in the sixth dimension, if you're looking at them and talking to them, or if they're putting videos up on YouTube, that is an impossibility. Because the third dimension is a spatial reference. We have three directions in which we can move. We can either go forwards and backwards, that's one direction. We can go left to right, that's the second direction. We can go up and down, that is the third direction. That's the third dimension. It's a box. So the fifth dimension has two other spatial directions that we can't even begin to comprehend any more than a two-dimensional being that lives on a flat plane can comprehend up and down. They can't comprehend it. So anybody who talks like that doesn't understand dimensions, but that's okay. It's not their fault. People throw around that word dimensions with a complete lack of understanding of what it means. So I don't think that we're going to go to the fifth dimension. That isn't to say that there aren't beings who are in the fifth dimension, and that isn't to say that beings in the fifth dimension cannot interact with us in the third dimension. They can. But if they do, the energy, the sheer power that we would experience would be overwhelming. Not to mention also the emotions. Each time you go up to a dimension, the emotions increase. Negative emotions disappear, and positive emotions like love and empathy increase exponentially. So if you were to interact with a fifth dimensional being, or a fourth dimensional being for that matter, the level of love would be more than your third dimensional body could process. So I believe that we will go to a higher version of frequency of the third dimension, which very well might be a completely different world. Meaning that if we go to that frequency, right now, this version of third dimension, we wouldn't be able to see or experience them. I'm willing to be wrong about that, but that is, I think, a real possibility. Having said that, light beings in 2 times in the past 3 years took me to a frequency within my own body and my own mind while I was walking around and interacting in the third dimension that was absolutely beyond anything I'd ever experienced. And it was, they said the first time around, I guess I'll go ahead and we'll start walking through this. So in July of 2022, extraterrestrials tell me that they are coming for me. So that sounds really ominous, and that was ominous for me as well. So what happens, I've come to find out. Extraterrestrial beings, they are usually higher dimensional beings. They're 4th, 5th, 6th, they're higher dimensional. They can, as I understand it, although I've never experienced it, I understand that they can lower their frequency if they wanted to physically show up in this third dimension. So that's all right, that's another subject I won't get into. So they could do that if they want to. There's a couple reasons that they don't. The first one is I don't think they like it. For the same reason you wouldn't like to walk into a smelly house. It's just, you could do it if you had to, but it's just not pleasant. I think the main reason right now is that if they allow themselves to be detected, they were to shift down to our frequency in the third dimension, I believe, I know for a fact they would be detected by the black ops human military that is currently at war with all extraterrestrials. So they would be shot down. All of the so-called retrieval, the UFO crash retrieval, these UFOs haven't crashed. They're perfectly capable of navigating quite well. It's not like all of a sudden, that they forgot how to drive or they fell asleep at the wheel or, can't handle, Earth's atmosphere or some ridiculously stupid thing. After they've gone millions of light years, through wormholes, they all of a sudden can't drive their own spaceships anymore. Now, what's happened is that those crafts have been shot down. They have been shot down by human beings who have scalar technology. They have, basically Star Wars and Star Trek phaser weapons. They can shoot anything out of the sky if they can detect it. So that's the second reason that they currently are not shifting down into the third dimension, because they'll get shot, and they'll get taken captive and killed and all kinds of other horrible things. So anyway, so what was I talking about here? So in July of 2022, ETs tell me they are coming for me. So what I was trying to say was that my human brain, when I get a telepathic communication, my human brain has to translate higher dimensional messages. These messages are, for me, the experience that I have is that the messages have energy attached to them. So they're higher dimensional energy. They're also there's the emotions are also sometimes very intense. And I believe that these beings, many of them aren't speaking English. They might just be sending an intention that my brain then interprets and puts into English so that I can understand it. It's also possible they're speaking their own, non-Earth language, and my intellect has to do its best to interpret. Because sometimes the words just don't make a lot of sense. For instance, this phrase, "We're coming for you." That sounds very aggressive. And what I thought they meant by that was that a ship was going to land and I was going to get taken on their ship. And it was quite a frightening thought. I was very new to this whole experience, and so I still didn't know how I felt about these beings. The experiences that I had were very liberating and beautiful and amazing, but they were incredibly powerful, and they were of a nature that I had never experienced before in the third dimension. This is coming from a guy who's done the most powerful spiritual, energetic practices in human history. I've done practices where, I can mess with 3D space-time. I can, I've out-of-body experiences and shamanic journeys. So when I say that, I'm saying a lot, that the energy that these beings have is beyond anything that I've ever experienced spiritually. So when I communicated with them, it was oftentimes at that kind of intense level. And so I had a lot of resistance to it, and I had a lot of anxiety. We fear what we don't understand, what we've never experienced. Now, here I am 3 years later almost, and I'm here to tell you that there's absolutely nothing to fear when it comes to extraterrestrials, regardless of what the false UAP whistleblowers out there want you to believe. There's absolutely nothing to fear. But when you experience higher dimensional energy, the third dimensional body feels that it is under attack. And there's some truth to that, because what we don't realize is that we are constantly emitting a frequency. Our manifestation, the physical manifestation that we have. Your body is a physical manifestation. And it is a physical manifestation of your non-physical mind, your non-physical third dimensional mind. You don't realize, but you're constantly broadcasting this frequency. If you stopped broadcasting this frequency, you would disappear. You wouldn't exist anymore. So we don't realize that it's just a programmed, unconscious thing that we do. It's part of the third dimension. So when we experience something that's higher than that, the real effect of that is our third dimensional reality starts to come apart. And that feels like death to us. So unless you're used to it and you've worked with it, your first reactions are going to be fear and anxiety. Even to this day, like in fact, yesterday, as I was lying here on my couch watching, Netflix or something, and I started feeling like anxious, and my brain started going into negative places, worrying about this and worrying about that, and I realized that it wasn't coming from anyone. I stopped and I said, "What's happening?" And I went, "Is somebody here?" And I closed my eyes and I said, is somebody here? Does somebody like to speak with me? And sure enough, a light being showed up. And I got taken, anyway, it was a whole very trippy scenario, and I was taken to another reality, and I won't talk about that in this video. But the point I was trying to make is that I knew that I was in the presence of a higher dimensional being, because my first reaction was I had that level of just non-specific anxiety. And that's a sign that my third dimensional body is sending what it thinks is a warning to its existence. So I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but we are going to have to shift up. We are going to have to choose to shift to a higher frequency. Anyway, I'm taking a long time to get to the subject here. So, in July of 2022, ETs tell me they're coming for me. So, the night before, I'm communicating with some light beings who showed up, and they say, "We are coming for you tomorrow." And I'm like, "What?" And I woke up the next morning very, excited and nervous and scared because I didn't know what that meant. And it took everything I had in me, and I went and looked outside my backyard, expecting to see a spaceship there with its door open, beckoning me to come in. And I went out and I'm like, "Okay, I'm here. You guys here?" And there wasn't a spaceship. But what happened next was what they were talking about. The night before, the way I interpret it was, "We're coming for you, and we're going to take you to the new Earth. We're going to take you to the new world." So I thought that was going to be, a ride in a ship somewhere. And as I said, the ship didn't come and land in my backyard, and my light being friends were there, and I could feel them. And what started to happen then was, over the course of what felt like, I'm looking back in hindsight, I might have the time wrong, but over the course of maybe a half an hour or an hour, my internal frequency began slowly shifting up. And it was at first it was a little unnerving. I didn't know what was going on, and then I did what I learned how to do, which is I relaxed into it. The anxiety, as it comes up, I realized that the anxiety, if you relax, actually turns into bliss. It's just like the same kind of thing that people talk about, when they do DMT. I'm not suggesting that you do that. I don't suggest people do that. But that same kind of thing where there's, before the DMT kicks in and they go to another dimension, first thing that happens is they feel a lot of anxiety. And that is because I'm quite certain that DMT in my brain was increasing. And we know that the brain naturally creates DMT. It's a natural thing. That's why I don't think it should be externally done. I do not recommend that people do DMT or anything else that creates an external rise of DMT in the brain, for a couple of reasons. First is there's no way for you to talk yourself out of the reality that this is an artificially created experience. You will always know that, and after the experience is over, you will know, oh yeah, it's because I took this thing. And so you don't realize that you have the ability to raise your DMT naturally within your brain. And what was the other reason? The second reason was what I just said. You can do it naturally. So one of the things I've come to find out is that connection with light beings instantaneously raises the DMT without, no two ways about it. So the DMT in my brain was going through the roof, and I could feel it, and I could feel my Kundalini was also awakening and rising, going through the roof. So what started to happen as I relaxed into this experience and I relaxed into this shift was this feeling of bliss and joy began to increase and increase and increase, and it's kept on going and it kept on going. And then it got to a level where I was in this place of complete bliss and joy. And I was not thinking about normal 3D things like money and job and reputation and taxes and all that stuff that we spend all of our time thinking about in the third dimension. I wasn't thinking about any of those things. And I started feeling this connection to everything. I started feeling a connection to all forms of consciousness, to all beings, to all things, and this feeling that I was everything. I was connected to everything. So the same kind of thing people talk about when they do psychedelics, except none of this was externally stimulated by any external chemical. And I decided, now that I knew what was going on, I knew that what they had done was that they had taken me to the frequency of what we call the fifth dimension. Now, throughout all of it, I also had this awareness that this was still, even though I hadn't taken any chemicals, it was still being artificially produced, meaning that somebody somewhere with who knows what, maybe with fifth dimensional technology, or maybe just a very powerful being was sending their intention and focusing on me, and because I was cooperating, I was shifting up. However it was, I knew that it was external and that I had a limited amount of time to explore and appreciate it. So it was in the summer here. I was here in Florida, and I went down to the beach here, and I walked around on the beach, and I was connected to absolutely everything. The water had, I could feel the life and the consciousness of the water. I could, if I chose to, I could send my energy down into the earth, and I could feel deeply into the earth and connect directly to the spirit of the earth and the spirit of everything, the rocks and everything else I was, walking on. And the sun, of course, I was able to connect directly to the sun and feel the joy and the love that the sun continuously is giving with her solar rays, continuously just full of love. And then there was a feeling of connection with everything. Whether there was a bird, whether it was a plant, whether it was a dog, somebody's dog on the beach, whether it was a person, hearing babies crying, somebody's baby was crying. And normally that kind of stuff, just, I don't want to listen to that. But I was like, oh, the little baby, and I wanted to go and pick the baby up and comfort it and hold it, and everybody was my family member, and it was, I became aware. I'm glad I had the wherewithal to know that, these people aren't having this experience. So I'm not going to go and do what I want to do, which is walk up to everybody and hug them and tell them, you're a beautiful being of light. I wanted to do that, of course, and so I didn't do that. And so that continued for a while. And I had a lot of time to be thinking about what I could do to create that experience. And there was, I don't know how long, it felt like a fairly long period of time. But anyways, time is kind of irrelevant in that state. But what I remember was that I could adjust the intensity of the experience. Now, if I had the experience to do over again, I would have done things a little differently. I mean, I would have relaxed into it more deeply, and I would have gone as deep and as high into it as I possibly could. But there was still a part of me that was still 3D, obviously, because I was walking around in 3D, and 3D beings could see me, and I was aware that I wasn't invisible. So, but I knew that if I started focusing on mundane things, if I started focusing on mundane things like, my shopping list, or something like that, the bliss would start to edge down, and it would edge down so that I could use that mundane mind to accomplish something. And so it was sort of like, if I need to do something, I can shift this down and focus on that, that physical thing. And then I did the opposite, and I started focusing more deeply on the connection I had to all of the plants and the animals and the birds in the sky and the clouds and and then the energy started shifting up and getting higher and higher. And I don't know that I was frightened, but I sort of had this feeling like, wow, if I keep going, am I going to disappear? I had this feeling like I kind of had to keep myself here. So I remember sort of kind of part of me, keeping me down at a certain level. And so that lasted for some time. I mean, I was in that state for, I want to say, a few hours, because it's slowly, the frequency raised slowly until it was at, I was at a peak. And then it slowly started coming back down. And then, by nighttime, I was, even though I was still feeling it, I was still kind of in a spacey, trippy, happy mood. I was pretty much back in 3D. And so I had a lot to think about. And I did. I thought about it a while. And I first thought about, so I don't understand. I mean, you guys said you were coming to get me, and I thought, but I stayed here. So my first thought was I had done something wrong. I had screwed up. Now, of course, I can look back on it in hindsight, and of course, none of that is true. It's a common experience with interdimensional interactions, is that we tend to operate from some kind of shame. So if you're doing these interdimensional meditations that we're doing, and there's part of you that feels like, if you feel weird or you feel kind of shameful afterwards, or you feel like you did something wrong, that is just a normal part of the third dimension response to higher dimensional energy. Every single time that we do these, every single time I worry that nothing's going to happen. And we've done a bunch of them, and we've had so many unbelievably powerful experiences. You'd think that I would just think, oh yeah, it's always going to work. But just about every time I think, I don't know if I can do it. I don't think I can make this happen. Even, if I meditate beforehand and I connect to them and I can feel their energy, there's still a part of me that doubts that I'm going to be able to pull it off. So if you ever have that experience, that's part of it. It's part of the third dimension reaction. Because what ends up happening is that your third dimensional reality wants you to stay here, and you're programmed to want to stay here. So when you have experiences that go outside of the third dimension, your third dimensional mind is programmed to talk you out of that. And the quickest way to talk you out of something is to make you feel guilty or shamed or frightened. Those things will talk you out of your experience much more quickly. And while I'm on the subject, the way that you know that you are having an actual experience is that the end result of it is that you become happier, healthier, and more prosperous. So if you're having spiritual experiences and you're having crazy experiences, and these go on for a while, what you want to do is you want to look and ask yourself those three questions. Are you feeling happier, healthier, and more prosperous? If you're feeling isolated and angry and fearful and paranoid, these are not signs that you're having a higher dimensional interaction, just to let you know. So I'm here to tell you that has been my experience with these beings, is that the more that I do this, again, it might be traumatizing to my third dimensional understanding, and I might, initially have some fear and some, confusion or something that might happen, either at as it's happening or afterwards. As I continue to surrender to it and relax into it, I become happier, I become healthier, I become more successful in life and more comfortable. Determination for yourself, but I'm telling you from my experience that the result of those experiences, if you do have powerful experiences, they will result in you becoming happier and more healthy as a result. All right, so let's see, what else did we want to talk about? All right, so ETs tell me they're coming for me. That was the first time that it happened. All right, so I discover that 5D is not a place, it is a frequency. So before that, I thought 5D was a place. And so when the beings said, we're coming for you, we're going to take you to the new Earth, we're going to take you to 5D, I thought that's why my brain said, oh, a ship's going to land, I'm going to get in a ship and they're going to take me to another location. And in my meditations, when I go to 5D, sometimes I actually go to what I experience as another physical location. But that first experience taught me that what we call 5D is not a physical location, it is a frequency. And that is extremely important. So this brings about the understanding of quantum entanglement. So if you know anything about that, I know just enough to be dangerous with it. But quantum entanglement says that even if you have two entangled particles, and one of them is 100 million light years away, they will respond as though they are right, physically with each other. So what does that mean? It means that consciousness is quantum entangled. This is why when we do live guided meditations, we can communicate directly with beings that are in other galaxies. Instantaneously, they can communicate with us. And as I understand it, the unacknowledged dark military actually has technology to communicate instantaneously across any distance. And they currently are able to do that. So consciousness is entangled. We can connect with all consciousness immediately. It doesn't matter where they are. They are here. You as a conscious being, a light being, you are connected to everything. And up until my experience with this, that was just one of those really wonderful, nebulous things that people talked about, and that, yogis talked about and all that. But it was just talk, if I'm being honest. I couldn't personally experience it. I could logically accept that, and spiritually it was a pleasant idea. But it wasn't really a reality for me. It is a reality for me now. And I have since learned, since my interactions with higher dimensional beings, is that if I choose to, I can travel anywhere and communicate with any being anywhere in the entire multiverse, across time and space. And so if I really want to figure something out, I can do that. Now beforehand, I used to have to put a lot of work in it. I might have to do a really long ritual, or I might have to do energy work for a really long time. I might have to do really powerful, high-level energy work, or go into a shamanic trance or something like that. But it's to the point now where not all the time, but oftentimes I can just simply close my eyes and make the decision. And I can be instantly connected with any consciousness anywhere. By the way, I'll give you a cool little tip if you want to work through challenging relationships. Sorry, I'm in the end of the third week of my COVID. I feel fine, except there's just a tiny little cough in there. Just every day it gets a little bit better. It's been 3 weeks. I was going to give you, what was I going to, oh yeah. So if you have issues with anybody in terms of a relationship, I'm going to give you a trick that you can use that will help you. So the one thing to understand is that every single human being on this planet, no matter how evil, no matter how unconscious, no matter, pick your negative stereotype, underneath that human meatbag costume, there is an absolutely perfect higher dimensional light being, which we call the soul. And that person is filled with love and compassion. And that soul is playing a video game. And the being that you're interacting with is their outer shell. It's their avatar. It's their fictional program. And the fictional programs can be very hurtful, and they can be very unconscious. And the reason is because they have incarnated into the third dimensional reality. They have incarnated here to learn something about consciousness. And the way that you learn is by investigating the limitation. So if somebody has a limitation with compassion, it's because they've come here to learn about compassion. If they have a limitation with patience, with self-love, with whatever it is, you pick it. The thing that bothers you the most about them is the thing that they have come to learn. They've come here to learn that. So anyway, I got distracted because there's people just typing stuff in the comments section. It's distracting me. So I had to cover it. So now I can keep talking. I will get to the questions, but I want to get through my lecture before I do that. All right. So no matter how imperfect the person is that you're dealing with, underneath that is a perfect soul. Now, it may not be healthy for you to interact with this particular human avatar. So I don't recommend interacting with somebody that's abusive or harmful, or is going to bring you down, is toxic in any way. But if you are struggling with your any relationship, what you do is you can go into meditation, and you can imagine that you are talking to the soul of that person. So bring a picture of that person to your mind, and then imagine their soul. So say, I want to talk to the soul of Joe Smith, whoever it is. And imagine that soul coming out of the physical body, and it will be a perfect being that is full of love, full of compassion, is a beautiful light being, and has nothing but love for you. Now you have somebody that'll listen to you. So if you have some complaints, some resentments, some pain, some hurt, some anger, you can tell the soul that, when you did this, it really made me feel this way. It really bothered me. It really hurts me. It really frightens me when you do this, when you do that. And then you can communicate with that as though it's the most reasonable person you've ever met. Can you help me with this? I'd love to fix this problem here, and just pour your heart out, and then allow that soul to see you in that state, and ask the soul, can you please, work on this with your avatar so that we can have a better connection. And watch what happens. You'll see that things, if you're meant to stay with that person, things will begin to change. If karmically your time is up, there's nothing you'll be able to do. You won't be able to work anything out. This is why relationships just all of a sudden end, and no matter how hard people try, they can't reconcile. It means that their karma together has finished, and one or both of those people will be so irrational that you'll never be able to rationally communicate or work anything out with them. Anyway, So I do that all the time. I talk to people's souls all the time, and I now have an experience as a result of these experiences with light beings. That I have this experience that I can communicate with just about everybody. All right, what else? So Pleiadians return later and ask me what I need. This is the second time. So the second time that I was taken to the 5D frequency, this was, I want to say maybe a year ago. Yeah, it was about a year ago. And I was in Australia. And a lot of stuff was going on. I was getting huge things were coming to me. I've talked about some of them. It was a really intense time in terms of light being and extraterrestrial interaction. But one day these beings showed up, and I could tell that they were Pleiadians. I could even see them in my mind's eye. And Pleiadians, my experience of them is that they're very helpful to me. As I found out and talked about in recent videos, I found out later that they actually were my advisors, and so they've been my advisors in multiple lifetimes, in this lifetime as well. They warn me when something is, when I'm going to get myself in trouble. They usually show up and oftentimes will tell me, you're careful, you're about to step on a landmine here. So the Pleiadians show up, and this time they asked me, they said, is there anything that we can do for you? And they're very happy people. It's just amazing. I mean, I don't care what beings look like, but it turns out my experience of them is that when I see them, I do see them as these tall, blonde, Nordic looking, they look human. Long blonde hair, blue eyes. And they said, this time very happy, and they said, is there anything that we can do for you? And I said, yes, I want to go to this 5D place, because I was, I was thinking about it, and I wanted to know what it was. I wanted to experience it, and I was dead serious. What I meant by that, again, I had lapsed into thinking that 5D was a place, and I was wanting to go to the physical place that was 5D, because I was creating my 5D world. And so I asked them, they said, is there anything that we can do for you? I said, yeah, take me to 5D. And they sort of talked with each other, and they said, all right, we'll think about it. So they didn't say that they were or they weren't, they just took my request. And I didn't think about it until a couple days later when the same thing happened. I started getting hit with this frequency, and it was when I lived in, I had this, when I was in Australia, I had this, this routine that I would do. And what I would do every day, I did go to the grocery store, but I bought most of my food. There were street vendors. And I really loved the beach town I lived in. And I lived on the side of this, beautiful tropical forested, side of a cliff overlooking the entire coastline, and I would get in my car and drive, like a quarter mile down the street, and there were all these restaurants and street vendors, and I would get this really good, healthy food, and then I'd take it back home. And so it was just about time for me to do that, and I started getting hit with this energy. And the energy started getting more and more intense, and it started rising up, and I was a little afraid getting in my car, but I drove my car, whatever it was, a half mile or whatever. And as I'm walking down this sidewalk with all of these restaurants and those street vendors and things, the 5D frequency really started kicking in. And I was sitting there waiting for my food, and I could feel everybody. And I felt so much peace and so much joy and so much bliss. And this time I relaxed into it. This time I made the effort not to think about my mundane, nonsense. And if I focused on somebody, like, somebody standing in front of me, if I focused on them, I could feel, if I chose to, I could feel this connection with them, and I could feel within me there would be a compassion and an empathy and a love that would start to rise within me. And I started having this feeling like if I wanted to, I could like heal every single person, on that block. And I went with that, and I allowed myself to really experience that. And so what that taught me was, once again, that 5D was not a place, it was a frequency. And that frequency is everything that I described. So it's impossible to be in that frequency and have the things we associate with the negative aspects of 3D: fear, anger, judgment, loneliness, isolation, guilt, shame, greed. Those things won't exist in that frequency. And I became aware that if every single person that was here was feeling what I was feeling, I mean, the whole place would just turn into a party. And, the food vendors would just be giving food out for free, and everybody would be friends, and the world would completely change. And I realized that frequency, that experience, that in that world it will be impossible for there to be things like money, banks, governments, armies. I mean, the only thing that will exist is there will be that quantum entanglement, that spiritual quantum entanglement with souls. And even if you've never met somebody, a person walks down the path and you see them, your soul and their soul are going to erupt in joy at seeing each other, as though you're old friends, even if you've never seen them, even if you've never met them. And also very likely you will immediately see that, oh my gosh, that's, so-and-so from the planet, Virgon, whatever. You'll instantly remember them from past lives, and you'll reconnect with people. It's going to be, and by the way, this is going to happen with extraterrestrials. When we get to that place where we are in a world where we communicate directly with extraterrestrial beings and they're coming and going on our planet, there will be, here's a scenario that absolutely will happen. It's happened to me many times, and maybe I'll share with it, but it hasn't happened exactly like this, but this is how it would happen. A ship would come and land, and you'd get this feeling like, oh my gosh, I know the people in that ship. And beings will come out. They'll be of a completely different species from a completely different planet, and you'll immediately recognize them. And you will all of a sudden have an awareness of a past life that you've shared with them on another planet, in another society. And you'll realize that they might be family members. They might be somebody you were married to in a past life. And you'll have this reuniting, and oh my God, it's you. I haven't seen you for 5,000 years. How have you been? And it will be, it's going to be phenomenal. I get that a lot, and I'm not the only person, just to let you know. And this is how I know that I'm not making it up, because other people who have been doing interdimensional meditation, and I haven't shared with them any of these things, and they'll go, man, the other day I was a meditation, and then they'll explain something that I experienced, and I know they're not making it up. But what happens has happened so many times, and it happened last night. I can sense that a being is here and wants to talk, because I get what I call a text, which means I get a jolt. I'll get a higher dimensional jolt in my chest, a very blissful electromagnetic jolt in my chest, and I go, oh, somebody wants to talk. It's somebody saying, I'm here and I want to talk. But I have to invite them in. So I go into meditation and I invite them into my energy. And lots of times there will be, and as I'm saying it, I'm feeling a lot of energy as I'm saying it. There will be beings, like, I kid you not, it's like there's been times when there's been like groups of light beings, and they're like teenagers. They feel like teenagers, and they've been like, oh my gosh, I just wanted to meet you. I've been hearing so much about you. And from where we are in our galaxy, we're hearing about the things that you're doing on planet Earth, and we wanted to come and meet you, and we wanted to tell you how inspiring you are and how much we appreciate you. And we're all talking about you, and you teach us so much just by being who you are. I mean, imagine everybody talking to you like that, and imagine feeling the love and the happiness and the joy and the respect that they imagine every being treating you like that. That's what I believe this new frequency will be like. And so I'm telling you now, in this new frequency, this new world, that's going to happen to everybody listening to me. You're going to just be walking, down some beautiful path, and some light beings are going to show up in a ship, and they're going to get up, and you might even feel them coming, and they'll show up and they'll say, we just wanted to reconnect with you, or we just wanted to let you know that we've been watching you, and we love everything, whatever it is that you do. You're an artist, you're a singer, you're a painter, you're a philosopher, you're a healer, you're a parent, whatever the heck it is that you are. If you do it with your soul, if you do it with all of your being, there are infinite numbers of beings out there on different planets and different dimensions who are, we're their television, and they love you, and they appreciate you, and they respect you, and they will come and let you know. You will be invited. This happens to me all the time. Being will show up. This happened last night. Beings will show up, and they'll say, we'd like to take you somewhere to meet people. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And oftentimes I'm taken there astrally. Sometimes my astral body will go in their ship and, instantly, whatever, go across the galaxy or whatever it is. And there will be just a crowd of light beings, and they'll be waiting for you, and they'll want to tell you how much they appreciate what you're doing. That's what was happening to me last night. And these beings were telling me, and again, they feel like groupies. That's how it feels like they're my groupies. And they were saying, we've been watching you from they're really far away. We've been watching you from where we are, and we remember when you left. We remember when you left to go to Earth and start this project, and we've been watching what you were doing. We just want you to know how much we appreciate, because what you do on Earth, and this is important for everybody listening, what you do on Earth, and when you overcome obstacles in your life, we are empowered. We are blessed, we learn, we grow, and we feel our consciousness expand because of the work that you're doing. Let's be clear, the work that you are doing is living your human life. When you're living your human life on this earth, you are doing work that you cannot even begin to calculate. It's so unbelievably powerful. And there are so many beings that are benefiting from it. You don't realize it, but you're coming here on planet Earth and having your consciousness experience, your experiment of working through pain, guilt, loneliness, sadness, addiction, insecurity, greed, whatever the heck it is. That thing that you are working with, and when you overcome those things, there are beings that are quantumly entangled with your soul, whose consciousness expands because of you living your life. It's so important that human beings realize how incredibly important they are, and that every life on this planet is incredibly, incredibly important and essential for all consciousness. And we live in this third dimension that, we feel like, there's usually so much shame and so much guilt and, insecurity and self-hatred and, all of that stuff that we struggle with. I mean, look what's happening with celebrities right now. I mean, they're just falling apart, and it's really clear that they're so desperate for what you think of them. They're so insecure. Now, that's just one thing. I mean, human beings are just so insecure. And if we would realize that everything we do is so valuable and so important whenever we live from our soul. When we live from our soul and we overcome our human consciousness experiment limitations, it heals and empowers all other conscious beings in the multiverse. And when we get to this new frequency, you're going to find that out. These beings will tell you that. They will tell you that non-stop. Anyway. The next day my frequency again was, okay, I talked about that. So yeah, even if 10 or 20% of humans felt this frequency, the whole world would shift. There's no way that the world would stay as it is if, I don't know what the percentage would be, but I'm imagining 10%, 20%. If that happened, the entire human conscious collective would flip up to the next level. So what we are seeing and what we are about to see is we're going to see people who are getting on the ferry and people who are getting off. The people who operate and respond from their third dimensional fear of higher dimensions. They're gonna, Zelensky last night talked himself out of, having the United States, support him in peace. He talked himself out of that and he got kicked out. Well, human beings are going to start doing that, but they're going to be getting themselves, they're going to be choosing to opt out of this frequency shift. But you can't just sit there and hope something happens. You're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to opt in and get on the ferry, or you're going to have to decide that you don't want anything to do with it. And of course, people who say they don't want anything to do with it, they'll have other excuses. They'll come up with all kinds of excuses. They'll blame other people and other things, and they will talk themselves out of it and destroy that possibility. So don't worry about that. You don't have to go through that if you're willing to surrender, and if you're willing to do the work, which is simply look at yourself. And if you want the fastest way to do that, go on my channel and go to the playlist that says 12 Steps to 5D. That is the single most powerful method to shift your frequency in your brain so you can start making positive decisions and being conscious about the decisions that you make. Because the people who will choose not to go there will be operating completely unconsciously. They think they'll know why they're doing what they're doing, but they will have no clue. And conversely, the people who choose to get on this new frequency, it'll be because they are becoming more conscious, and they will be aware that they are choosing to shift their frequency up and experience a new frequency within themselves. All right, so I said if even 10 or 20% of humans felt that frequency, the whole earth would shift. And then lastly, I can sometimes recreate that frequency in interdimensional meditation. I did it last night, very briefly. And the difference was, it wasn't an artificially created frequency. So when the 2 times that the light beings shifted me up, I had to cooperate with it, of course. It wouldn't have worked if I didn't cooperate. I had to cooperate with it. But at the same time, I knew that I was being helped. Like I said, how, I don't know. Maybe there's some, who knows? Who knows what they were doing to shift me up there, but they were. And I knew that it was artificial. I could feel that, all it would take is for them to just stop doing what they were doing and I would shift back down. But last night when we were doing the meditation, if you remember, do you remember the part in the meditation where I suggested that you take on the role of a light being, that you go to the 5th dimension and you see a being there and you become the light being guide to that person? When we were doing that, I felt it like I've never felt it before. And I felt like, man, if I keep doing this, I'm going to leave this world. I'm going to leave this reality. I mean, it's, I had to just, stop the meditation at some point, so I did. But I really felt like I had gone there and that I was there. And that happens a lot during the interdimensional meditations. Many of you may have already experienced it as well. And you know that experience afterwards where, after the meditation, or you wake up the next day and you're like, what the heck was that? Where was I? What is this? You wake up into this reality and you go, what is this reality? Why are we here? What's going on? And you're in between worlds like that. So that happens if you're lucky enough to experience it doing these interdimensional meditations. So I wish I knew when and how this was going to come. I wish I could tell you there was going to be a day that, I wish I knew that. I don't. I don't know when and how it's going to happen. I know that it is happening. And I do know that it will happen, that we will eventually get there. When and how, I'm not so sure how that's going to be. And so I'm experimenting. Lots of times in these interdimensional meditations, I'm experimenting. I'm seeing how far I can push the boundary. It's not so much like it was where I'd go into meditations and light beings take me places. That still does happen. But more often than not, I go into meditation and I push the boundaries as far as I can. And I see how, I'm working to see where I can go. And light beings tell me afterwards, we've never seen anything like that before. What you did in that meditation, that was something that's never been done before. And so it's our responsibility, is my point. And I'm happy to take all the help I can get. I don't need to do this on my own. I'm happy if there's a solar flash that shifts me up. I'll be the first to sign up for that. But I'm not waiting around for that, and I'm not going to put the responsibility of my shifting to a higher frequency on anything or anybody else. I'm going to take responsibility for that, and I know that my experience is that when I do that, the universe always shows up. So I recommend that. All right, so we've gone through pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. I'm happy to take a look at the questions here. Blue Sky, I appreciate the input, but when people just type in a bunch of their opinions like that while I'm talking, and I want to get to a question, I have to scroll through all of that to try and find somebody's question. So what I really appreciate is people coming here, that don't have all the answers, but that are asking questions. All right, what else? So Grim Reaper Q, do me a favor, don't be lazy. Write the word question. As I just said, I have to scroll through a bunch of comments to try and find the questions. The way that I see the questions is when somebody actually writes the word question in all caps. So think about me being able to answer your question. Give me the tools to do that. So I see you wrote Q, so you're obviously asking a question. In last meditation, I learned my energy is dense, heavy, dark mist with small purple tint. It's some sort of transformative energy. When Naga came to me, I got punch in my brain, word Lucifer multiple times. Lucifer is Naga. I am Lucifer. I am nuts. Before this, I learned that I am Abubis. I don't know who that is. And black hole and God. Know what? Not religious, not spiritual. So the term Lucifer is an interesting term. Of course, the monotheists use it for the devil, but the term Lucifer means the carrier of light, means the light bearer. So the Bible is an absolute gaslighting spiritual path, because and this happens now. This is why there are people out there that believe that there are such things as false beings of light that trap you into a reincarnation trap. Why people tell you don't go into the light. I mean, it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It is nothing but fear, and it is the most third-dimensional belief there is, and it comes straight out of the Bible. So the idea was that God had his highest, most perfect angel, and his name was the bearer of light. He was this being of light, Lucifer. But he became egotistical, and he tried to overcome God, and God threw him out of heaven, and he fell to the earth, and he became the devil. And so what you're not being told is you're being told to be afraid of the light, to be afraid of your own soul. It is such a gaslighting, manipulative, nonsensical religion. So it's impossible for the devil, the being of darkness, the being of deceit, which there isn't one, by the way. But if there were a dark being of deceit and evil, it would be impossible for that being to have once been the most bright, beautiful being in heaven. That can't happen. It's not a possibility. And if it is, then the God who created that world is a giant screw-up. Think about it. All-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving, all that. He creates the most perfect being at that time called Lucifer, and Lucifer rebels against him and turns into his enemy. I mean, what kind of a complete loser screw-up does that? You want to worship that God? Go right ahead. He's a complete loser. Just a complete screw-up. So if you got the name Lucifer, that's just Latin for he who is the bearer of light. It means you're a light being. Lucifer is not a Naga. Lucifer is a fictional character. So there is no Lucifer that was written in the Hebraic, in the Abrahamic and the Christian text, is a fictional character. He doesn't exist. But the name Lucifer is a beautiful name. It means the bearer of light. There might be a Naga that is a bearer of light, but it sounds like you're making the connection with the devil and Nagas and Lucifer. It sounds like you're making a loose connection, and I'm trying to destroy that because that's an old, Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic, gaslighting, nonsensical understanding. So you're not nuts. I don't know what Abubis is and black hole is, but I'm sure if you explore and meditate on those, black holes are portals to light realms. So if you want to go to the light, you go through a black hole. Black holes will take you to higher dimensions. I've traveled through them in my astral. We've done it in the interdimensional meditations a lot of times. So, feeling nuts is normal. That's one of the things that happens as a result of going beyond your third dimensional understanding. Your brain is going to tell you that you're nuts. So sounds like you're having powerful experiences, and from what I can tell, it sounds like it's working. All right, let's see what else. Mastering your reality, that's not a question, but you say the CE5 actually works. So yeah, CE5 does actually work. That's how I came up with interdimensional meditation. It's just basically another version of CE5, except we're not sitting out in a field in lawn chairs looking up at the sky. We are taking our astral body and we're going to them. But it's the same principle. I downloaded the app and I've got a recording, and now I use that recording in conjunction with Celestial Qigong. My body is rattled with joy. So you can use the app and the recording and those tones. My understanding is those tones were something that was given to him, talking about Dr. Greer, and that they have some kind of connection to what he's doing or whatever. But the truth is that you don't need that. That is for our benefit. Having the app and having the tones and using the radio, I did it in the beginning, it's more for us. It's so that it gives us something to hold on to mentally, so that we can feel like we understand what's happening. Because without that, if light beings were to show up and to connect with you, you would flip out, because it would be so strange and so bizarre. You would just completely talk yourself out of it ever happening. So those things really are just ways that you give permission to the light beings to communicate with you. You don't need it. But you can use it if you want. Nothing wrong with using it. L. Joanne question: what are your thoughts on Christ consciousness? So hi L. Joanne, I don't know if you're new to the channel or not. I'm going to read your whole question before I respond. So what are your thoughts on Christ consciousness? I keep hearing and seeing so many people recently talking all about it, and I'm curious what your take is. So L. Joanne, nothing personal, but I don't like questions that start out with what are your thoughts on? For a couple reasons. One of them is I talk about so many subjects on here. I teach so many subjects, and they're deep and powerful subjects that are worthy of discussion and worthy of exploration. So the best way to interact with a teacher is to talk to them about what they teach. In some, back in the day, like if you were to go to a Chinese master's class and you were to ask him that question, hey, what do you think of so-and-so's Qigong? That teacher would turn around and stop talking to you. Somebody would walk up to you and say, thank you, this is not the right class for you, and they would usher you out. Because a teacher can't teach you if you're asking about somebody else's stuff. So it distracts from what I'm doing, and it doesn't give me the ability to help you. So it's a roundabout way of saying you don't realize it, but that's a disrespectful thing to say to a teacher. Now, I know you didn't mean it that way. You have an understandable thing, but answer that. Do I ever talk about? I just got through talking about how ridiculously stupid Abrahamic religions are. So what do you think my thoughts are going to be on the term Christ consciousness? It's just a word. And people who use the word Christ consciousness, for the most part, they're not talking about Christianity. Let me say something. Listen, since you brought it up. It's important to understand, we need to understand what our unconscious attachments are. I'm very vocal about my disapproval of Christianity. I'm very vocal about it. And it's not because I'm into competing with other religions. There's a lot of spiritual practices that I haven't done and don't do, and I have nothing but respect for them. Christianity is not one of them. And besides the fact, everything I've said, I've written books about it as well. So El Joan, I have books. If you go to michaeldenny.org, you'll find my link to my books. And I have books where I write about why the Abrahamic religions are so toxic, and why they have been used to control people's minds. you don't realize it now, but the people who are controlling our minds are using the same principles that were first introduced to the world through Abrahamic monotheism. We've become so ingrained with it, we don't need to go to church anymore to be ingrained. Our society is already ingrained. The important devaluation methods are there. We don't need, the symbol of the cross or any of that to do it. But even among people like Gnostics, for instance, New Age spiritual people who like the idea of Jesus, but what they do is they take what they like about Jesus and they get rid of the things like hell and other stuff that they don't like. They delete that out. So they cherry pick what they want. And people can't tolerate the thought that Jesus is a fictional character. I mean, there are just some people, even though they would never choose to believe in hell or damnation, they can't tolerate the thought that Jesus is a fictional character. They can't tolerate it. And the reason why they can't tolerate it is because we've been ingrained to believe in this. But I'm here to tell you that you cannot interact with the subject of Christ without believing in self-devaluation. You can't do it. Because the whole idea of Jesus was that he came to forgive humans of their sins and to get rid of their, because the idea in the Bible is that God hates his creation. He hates human beings. He hates them so much that he had to ritually murder his perfect son and then take the blood from that murder and then wipe it onto the face of all of the humans, so that when he looked at them, he would only see the blood of his anger and his rage would be satiated. Now, what I just said comes right out of the Bible. I said it in a very direct way, but if you go to church, that's what they'll teach you. They will literally teach you that God takes the blood of his son and wipes you with it, covers you with it, so that when he looks at you, he only sees the blood of his murdered son, innocent son. Means he needs to see an innocent person being narcissistically tortured and murdered before he feels like he can look you in the face. Do you want to worship that God? No. That's what Christianity was about. Christianity was about, God is a psychopath, but it's okay. We got this codependent guy who's going to take all of your punishment for you, and then, God will love you. It is the most absolutely destructive, narcissistically abusive. I mean, it describes a narcissistically abusive relationship to the T, and people have spiritualized it. So what do I think about Christ consciousness? Why in the world would I want that? The whole idea of Christ was that he was a narcissist. He was what people call often, like I forget the word that they use. They mean a covert narcissist, meaning he's hidden. He's a hidden narcissist. He's a narcissist that needs to be seen as a victim. In fact, he needs it so badly that if you don't accept him as your savior, think about that. You are saying that this narcissist who needs to have your worship so badly that he chooses to have himself ritually murdered so that his father will love you. He needs that so badly that his sacrifice doesn't even work. Because supposedly he sacrificed himself for the sins of all mankind. Well, then why aren't all humans, according to him, going to heaven? Only the ones that believe in him. Narcissists need you to believe in them. It's the most diabolical spiritual teaching ever released on the planet. It's the worst possible one. And it is so gaslighting. It is so toxic. It enmeshes you into the worst of narcissism and codependence and turns you into a codependent narcissist. The most judgmental people on the planet are who? That's right, Christians. It's because I know, I was a Christian. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I was a Bible student. I went to Bible college and I read the Bible in the original languages. I know the Bible better than Christians do. That's how I know how disgusting it is. So what do I think about Christ consciousness? At best, people who talk like that, at best, are trying to tap into virtue signaling. Because, that's all that Christians do is they virtue signal. Do you believe in Jesus? Yes, I believe in Jesus. God is so good. Oh, it's so, I hate it. I go to the local grocery store and I say thank you. And they go, have a blessed day. In other words, I'm a Christian and I just showed it to you. And now you know, and now I'm okay because, God wants me to tell everybody what my religion is. So you asked, so I'm telling you. I would drop it. I would run from any of that stuff. It's the biggest nonsense. Read my book. If you go to michaelwilliamdenny.com, you can also find it here at michaeldenny.org, the link to it. Read my book, Odin Says Jesus Was a Coward. You can find out why historically Jesus is an absolute fictional character, and you'll know why Jesus was made up. So, hope that answers your question. I hope it doesn't offend you. Okay, what else? Grim Reaper question. Anubis, not religious. I look on... okay, so that's not a question, my friend. Grim Reaper, when you write the word question, it means that you have a question to ask me. You didn't. You put a statement. So that's not a question. Nothing personal, but you wasted my time. What else? Thordis says, amazing experience last night. Yes, some ancient dimensional part of me, very subtle and blissful, joined my being, and a day has passed, so now it feels come to stay within. I had a very similar experience multiple times, so I'm really glad you shared that. I had an experience where 3 different beings merged with me, and I guess now they're just part of me. So I'm glad you shared that. Again, it helps me to know that I'm not alone in this. Okay, let's see what else. That's not a question. Joanne says, thank you for taking the time to respond. My apologies for coming across disrespectful. I know you didn't mean it. Everybody does it. It's just people. It's because we no longer have a traditional teacher-student reality. There used to be a time when you wanted to go train with the wizard, you wanted to go train with the Vitki, you wanted to go train with the guru, you wanted to go train with the Sifu. You had to follow certain protocols. And let's be clear, when teachers do that, teachers only, what they want is they want to be able to help others grow. And so they have to teach. And so their first thought when they meet a student is, can this student learn? Do they have the ability to empty their cup and learn? And if they don't, they won't take them. And it's not because they have anything against them. It's because they know they won't be able to teach them. And so that's why, students in the beginning sometimes have to go through tests to see if they'll be able to follow instruction and do things that they're not comfortable with, and be willing to take instruction and follow that instruction. I mean, that's the one thing, when I stop working with a client, it's when they stop following instructions. If they stop following instructions, I can't help them, because they're coming to me for help, and my thought is, how can I, if here's some things they can do which would help them in that, accomplish what they want or help them in that situation. And if they don't follow those instructions, I'm literally useless to them. So I stop working with them. Let's see. What else? Okay, all right. So I was preaching to the choir there. You agree with my understanding about Christianity. Okay, very good. That's it. By the way, Thordis, I keep meaning to get back to you. I know that. Anyway, I will email you and we'll work out a time so I can look at your astrology. By the way, we're going through quite possibly the most intense astrological period of human history. And so between now and the end of March 30th is the best time I've ever seen. I might even say the best time in history for people to be doing a spiritual practice. So I have a mantra specifically for me that I've memorized, and I walk around the house saying it. I'm saying it in my head all the time. I wake up, I've got it now, it's playing in my head all the time, and I wake up saying it. And I'm going to be doing that up until the end of this month, because this upcoming solar eclipse is going to be absolutely world changing, like nothing we've ever seen before. So, the point I'm trying to make is, if you want to find out what a good mantra or ritual for you is, you can go here to astrology.thunderwizard.com and you can get a reading from me or from one of my astrologers. And I recommend that you do that between now and the end of this month, so you can be ready for this shift. And the idea is that this shift is going to split. If there's going to be a world split, it's going to be on March 30th. I don't know when and if and how that's going to happen, but I do know that will be the demarcation point. And so people who are focused on their spirituality are going to shift in a different direction. People who are focused on their third dimensional garbage are going to shift down into another direction. And so what we want to do between now and then is we want to be willing to let go of all of our third dimensional attachments. And mantras, the reason why they work is they get into the unconscious and they reveal to your conscious mind all of the things that you need to let go of. So, and I've said before, if you don't have a mantra, you can do one. I'll write it here. Don't ask me about the spelling. I talked about it. If you followed me, this is the actual pronunciation that you want to do. Om Namah Shivaya. O-N-G. Om, not Om. Om. Om Namah Shivaya. So if you don't have a mantra, you want one, do that. Just say it over and over and over until you're doing it in your sleep. Okay, Ariel says, hello Mahadeva, I hope all is well. I've also been saying the mantra you gave me a while back. Thank you for all that. You're very welcome. Okay, that's it. I don't see anything else. All right, so again, I'm glad we're doing these things, and I thought I would calm down. The reason I stopped doing these question and answers is because I just don't have any filter when it comes to pointing out harsh truths, and it's because I want to help and I want to teach. And so I stopped doing that because that was just so intolerable for me but that's getting more and more, and people need to hear the truth more and more. So if I've offended anybody with my directness, know that it's coming from a place of love and a desire to be helpful. And if you're willing to hear it, and my experience, if you follow my directions, it will only help you. That's it. I love you all, guys. Please be good to yourselves. And I will see you very soon. You know what to do, right? Go here to michaeldenny.org. Go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe. The subscriptions are what keep me on this channel making these videos. You can also go to the shop and look for like the Maoshan 5 element. And I'm not done with them all yet, but I'm uploading interdimensional meditations for specific things to bring about in your life. All kinds of great stuff there. And every time you go and subscribe and or get one of those teachings, you help me pay my bills and keep this channel going. So I really appreciate all of you for doing that. That's it, my friends. I love you all. Please be very good to yourselves, and I will see you all very soon.